Welcome to PC Hardware Therapy and to today's Mini-ITX home NAS build. This video will be split into two parts. The first part will be dedicated to building the server and the second one focused on the software side of the things and the setup. So without further ado, let's look at the different components that will make this home NAS server and the reasoning behind choosing these components. Before we look into the components though, it is important to understand what were the requirements for this server to justify the choices made. One of the main requirements was to host a file server to host family photos and videos, as well as act as a backup location for different home PCs. In addition to these requirements, there was also other requirements like the size has to be small, it has to be quiet, consume low power, it has to be budget friendly, but also have future expansion possible. Now, I know what you're asking yourself. Is that too much to ask? Probably yes. And that's not even it. There is one other requirement which has gotten me interested of late, and that is also to use this server as a network video recorder for home security cameras. This is something I will touch upon in a separate video, but I will already install the hardware necessary to support this requirement. Lastly, I want to mention that there is no requirement of streaming shows or movies from this server. So with that out of the way, let's start looking at the components. Let's start with the motherboard, which is one of the most critical components when building a server. Keeping the design principles in mind, I went for a second-hand Asus Z87i Deluxe Mini-ITX mainboard with 6 full-speed SATA slots which support SATA 3 speeds, which is 6 GB per second. It has a gigabit LAN port, which some would say will not be enough to fulfill all the requirements. However, I would first like to see how far I can get with just the gigabit LAN. Afterwards, I can always stick in a 10 gigabit card in the PCI Express slot. I will not install a graphics card anyway in this slot. The board supports socket 1150 CPUs, and there is a huge choice of CPUs that can fit this motherboard. However, keeping in mind our low noise, low power, low price principle, I went for a second-hand i5 4460 CPU, which is a 35 watt TDP CPU with 4 cores and 4 threads. In future, if required, I can upgrade this to a low power i7 or even a full size i7. But let's see how far we can get with this CPU. I've seen people make NAS boxes with just an i3. So this will be very interesting choice to see over time. Since the motherboard supports 6 SATA slots, I had to find a Mini-ITX case with 6 hard drive bays. Although one can find many ITX cases with 6 to 8 hot swappable drive bays, they mostly come included with or have space for only a flex ATX power supply. And if you know anything about those power supplies, they can be very noisy, hence it will not be quiet. So my choice was to go with a case with either a full ATX power supply or an SFF power supply. And ultimately I went for the Fractal Design Node 304, which is built from ground up for a NAS and also pre-includes 3 fans, one 140mm fan in the rear and 2 92mm fans in the front to cool your hard drives. I also considered other cases like the SilverStone DS380, which also includes hot swappable drive bays with the backplane, but at more than double the price as compared to this case. It really tilted me towards this Fractal Design Node 304. But here's the thing, before settling for the Fractal Design Node 304, which is this one right here, I was seriously considering the Jonsbo N1 case, of which I will put a picture right here, which not only looks nice, takes even less space and supports also 6 hard drives. However, it was not only very expensive, as same as the SilverStone DS380, but also needed patience of a Siberian tiger to wait for its arrival. And as you might know, Siberian tigers are the most patient animals. However, keeping the Jonsbo N1 case in mind and the height restrictions of the CPU cooler, max CPU height 70mm, I already bought a cooler which is the Noctua NH12S, which is right here, and it should be enough to cool down this CPU, which is just of 35 watts TDP. For the RAM, I will be going with these Corsair Value Select 8GB sticks giving me a total of 16 gigabytes DDR3 memory. To keep the cost down, I also bought this second hand. It's not the fastest RAM because it has a cache latency of 11 nanoseconds. However, it will be enough for this build. If required, I can always add faster RAM or more RAM. Replace these with two 16 gigabyte kits, giving me a total of 32. Since this whole setup is based on desktop components, this RAM is not ECC type, meaning there will be no error correction in the memory. Now, one of the other most important component is the hard drives themselves, and for this build I went with two 4TB Seagate Iron Wolf NAS hard drives, bought new. You don't want to skimp on hard drives when building a NAS. Especially if you buy old drives, you're never quite sure how they were used and if they have any bad sectors. Okay, you can run some tests, but it's always best to buy hard drives new because they also then come with warranty. I'll put the exact part numbers in the description. One of them will end up being the data drive and the other one being as a parity drive in the NAS. As I mentioned before, I also want to use the server for home security camera recording, and for this purpose I bought a new 4TB Seagate Skyhawk surveillance drive. Typically surveillance drives are more suitable for 24/7 recording operation as they run faster at 7200 RPM, just like normal desktop hard drives, as compared to these NAS hard drives which only run at 5900 RPM. So all in all, to begin with, I will get 4 terabytes worth of usable storage. Since both the motherboard and the case support more than 3 more hard drive slots, I can add 3 more 4 terabyte disks to result in a total storage capacity of 16 terabyte when fully loaded, before needing a full overall to higher capacity disks. So this actually ticks our requirement of future expansion. We will use only 3 slots here for now and 3 drive bays in the case, and later on we can add 3 more hard drives or one after the other as necessary. For the PSU, I will make use of the Corsair VS550, which is a 550 watt PSU and is 80 plus rated. This power supply is actually an overkill for this build, as even if we are fully loaded, we only need a 220 watt power supply. But it was just something that I had lying around. For this build, I only need a flash drive working as a boot drive, and for this purpose I bought this SanDisk 32GB USB 3.1 flash drive. It's really small, so fits our requirement of being small. I can just fit it in the back and forget about it. Now enough talking about the components, let's get right into it and build this server. Let's prep the case for installation. I've recently done a video of this case, so if you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the description over here. Let's install the motherboard mounts. Our case is here ready for installing the motherboard. Let's prepare the motherboard, install the CPU, and put the CPU cooler already in. Let's install the CPU. Match the notch, which is down here. CPU goes right in. And close the notch. Let us also install the RAM, because I think after installing the cooler it won't be easy to install the RAM. In this motherboard, just put it in from one side, apply pressure, and it's installed. RAM 1 in, RAM 2 in. Now let's install the CPU cooler. These are the parts that we need to install our CPU cooler, the Noctua NH12S. First we have to attach the back plate. Then put these 4 spacers, mounting bracket, then the screws, time to put the thermal paste. I'll make a peanut size thermal paste in the middle. That should be enough. And now we put our cooler gently on top. Actually, we have ran into an issue with the side plate. I need to switch the fan to the top and use it as a downdraft cooling mode instead of the upward cooling right now. So let's switch the fan and see if that works. Let's first see if we will be able to fit it like so. Now it will not be a problem to fit this cooler. Fits nicely on top. Noctua cooler comes with this screwdriver. We will make use of this to tighten 2 screws one by one. It's now fully tight. We have a lot of clearance now. And now time to install the fan again. Let's switch it to a downdraft cooler, meaning I would be installing it like this. And the CPU cooler socket is right here. Make a little bend. That our CPU cooler is fully installed in downdraft mode. Oh, I almost forgot. I want to install this low noise filter in the fan cable. So let's do that now. Okay, we are done. Now let's install the power supply and see how much space we have, and to insert cables in these connectors. And also, before putting the motherboard in, I'll try to connect all these connectors while still outside the case. Let's open the power supply. As you can see, this is not modular, so we will have to tuck these cables somewhere. Power supply has to go in from this side. What really is a nice touch in this case is that, I don't know if you can see, there are rubber mounts here to mount your power supply so that it doesn't cause any vibration. Nice thinking. Power supply slides right in. I don't think we can reach this bottom screw here from inside, so I guess it will have to be 3 screws. Okay, with that our power supply is screwed in. Let's switch it on before we forget it. Now it's time to put in our motherboard. Let's install the IO shield. Go like this. Now let's see which of the connectors we can already fit in on this motherboard before it goes in. Power connector, EPS connector, we need both of these. This one goes in like this. 24 pin connector easily goes in like so. Then USB 3. Let's connect the front panel audio connector. I've also now connected the front panel connectors. Let's now put this motherboard inside this case. Really have to muscle through Not going to be easy. These IO shields have minds of their own. Finally, things are aligned. Let's put this in focus and bolt the motherboard down. With the motherboard in, our next step is to prepare our hard drive cages with hard drives. So I'll be installing one drive each per cage. So let's do that now. Let's mount these hard drive brackets in the case. Let's open this fan cable so that we can route it from the side. Now, as I mentioned before, these fans are controlled by, actually I mentioned it in the unboxing video. These fans are controlled by this fan controller. So all we need to do is give some power and we can route all three fans, the rear fan and the two front fans, with this fan controller. Let's keep the SATA hard drives in here. There is absolutely no room for the power cable. They really have to be bent, or what I could do is route them from within one of these hard drive brackets. Oh yeah, we cannot do that because other hard drive brackets will come in the way. Maybe along the power. This will be tight. Let's see. Let's find another way. If I can route these next to the RAM, that would be perfect. Let's try and muscle it through. Okay, finally I have that cable under, and I think that would be the best way to install it. Let's get the Iron Wolf drives first in, then the surveillance drive right here. It's pretty tight, all of this. The hard drive is almost touching the fan. So I think it would be best if I move the fan slightly behind. Here, not sure if you can see the middle hard drive. It's just touching. I could take this fan a notch lower. Let's move it lower, not by much, just one or two fins down. Shouldn't compromise its cooling capacity by much. Now let's close these. We still have to route power to these hard drives and SATA connections. That will also be a challenge. Mini-ITX building is all about overcoming those challenges. If you are new to the channel, I have also made a gaming PC build in the Sugo 14 chassis. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out if you like these kind of build videos. Alright, now we need to provide power to our hard drives. So how many SATA cables do we have? We have cable with one SATA connector, and we have two here, and we also have, don't think we need floppy disk connector. We also have one SATA connector here, two here, and we need to use one of these, which are both the same, and we actually don't need the PCI Express connector because we are not installing a graphics card anyway. Challenge number 2, getting the SATA cables to the hard drives. Wait, I think before the power cables, let's get the SATA cables. We need to connect two there and one over here. We have 3 long ones and one really short one. I think the short one will work quite well for this one. Let's see how short this one is. Oh yeah, it's perfect size. These are all right angled. Let's make use of all black cables. Somewhere I need to put that one in. There is no way I can get the SATA cables out from the back because we have molded the power cables. So let's do it this way, out, and then I have to fold it here. Now I have managed to fit in the SATA cables, and now it's time to put the power cables to these hard drives. I've managed to connect the power to all 3 drives here, and the SATA we already connected before. Let's now give power to the fan controller and also connect all the fans to this fan controller. There we go. These fan cables, I think they're better off coming at the bottom, and these front panel connectors should be tucked in first, I think, under these power cables. Let's route the fan cables here. That's 1, 2 and 3. Okay, just tuck them in. Okay, now all we have to do is tuck these power cables somehow under here. It's a lot of power cables to tuck in such a small space. I think it's better if you buy a modular power supply for this case. I'll make use of one zip tie on the top so that all these SATA cables at least don't come in the fan. Lastly, we have to put these screws to keep the hard drives from moving. And these screws are not very easy on your hands. Something that Fractal Design should consider changing. It doesn't match the rest of the quality of the case. Okay. With that, our server build is near complete and I can put the cover on. And then we will try to boot it. Like I mentioned before, the quality of these thumb screws is appalling at best. They just don't want to go in to an otherwise perfect case. With that, our home server NAS is complete, and no build is complete without actually powering on the server. So let's do that. Now I remember putting in the power supply to on position. So as soon as I put this cable in, I think we should get a light here, or maybe with a power button. So let me do that and see if it turns on. We don't have a light, and now we do. So the computer turns on, the server is ready. This was part 1 of the video. In the next part, I will install the OS and set up the server as a home NAS. So if you like this video, press the like button. If you would like to be notified of the upcoming second part of this video, where I'll be installing the OS and setting up the NAS, please subscribe and click on the notification bell. And for now, bye. See you in the next one.